Welcome! Each week I go through the data that's released about the coronavirus and see if I can do a statistical analysis to figure out what's going on. This video covers the week ending the 1st of June 2020 and I've subtitled it Grim Milestones. Quick overview of what we're going to discuss. I'm going to compare this week's results from last week's results to see what the trends are. I'm going to look at the growth rate of the disease overall and show that it isn't slowing as some people claim. I'm going to try to identify areas of most concern. I'm going to also talk about the lack of social distancing and the lack of wearing masks and what impact that might have on future trends. One of the important factors in this business is testing. This map shows the rate of testing by country. Now the countries shown in green are doing a good job testing, and the darker the green, the better the job they are doing. It's the countries that are in yellow, orange and red that are in trouble. Another problem we have is a lot of countries aren't actually telling us what their testing rates are, or we don't believe them, which leaves this whole testing issue a grey area. And those areas are shown, needless to say, by a grey area. As I said, I've labelled this video Grim Statistics, and one of the grim statistics is how many mass graves are being dug around the world. This is a picture of what's going on in Brazil at the moment, but that's not the only country that's doing this sort of thing. The world passed 6 million confirmed cases this week. It also is approaching 375,000 deaths. The US, on the other hand, has gone past 1.8 million confirmed cases and has passed 100,000 deaths. These are very grim statistics when you think of, for example, 9/11, which caused a fuss for years and years and years, only involved about 4,000 deaths. So let's compare this week's result with last week's and see whether there's been an increase or a decrease in the relative rates. Global cases are now about 6.1 million, which is an increase of 800,000 over last week. That's up slightly by 15%. Global deaths are approaching 370,000, and that's 28,000 higher than last week, which is an increase of 8%, again slightly higher than last week. US cases at about 1.82 million, which is 160,000 higher than last week, an increase of 10%, again slightly higher than the previous week. US deaths are at 105,000. That's an increase of 8,000 over last week, an increase of 7%, which is slightly lower than the rate of last week. Lethality, which I define as deaths over the number of confirmed cases, is 6.1%, and that's down from what it was last week. So there's some good news here, but generally the picture is still looking fairly bleak. Here's a fairly familiar picture, one of my favorite tools for looking at what's going on. And this is the overall number of cases as a function of time. That's the red line. If you carry this red line on up from earlier times, you'll see that the actual data is deviating to the left of that line, which means that the rate of infections is increasing. And if you carry on in that way, you can get an estimate how fast we're going to reach various points to see whether it's accelerating or decelerating. The increase can be seen in the number of new cases shown by this black dashed curve, and you can see over the last 3 weeks it's been increasing quite significantly, and that's mainly due to increases in the Americas. That's North and South America. At the moment that's the United States and Brazil. You can see that the European numbers are coming down, that's the yellow, and other parts of the world are going up, and that's mainly places like India that are causing problems. If we project forward, we will reach 7 million with the old figures in about the 15th of June, but with a new linear projection that could be at least a week earlier on the 7th of June. So we'll see when we pass 7 million to see whether this is accelerating or decelerating. Let's do an international comparison. We're first going to take a look at the countries that are not doing very well as far as handling this crisis is concerned. And we can look at it from a numerical point of view, those countries that have had more than 50,000 cases in the last week. And the USA tops that list, with Brazil in second place, Russia third, and India coming up behind. All of those countries have had more than 50,000 cases. And percentage-wise, that would be South Africa, Egypt, Brazil, India, Mexico are the ones that are increasing at the most rapid rate, and all of those are above 50% increase over the previous week. The countries that are handling this the best, from a numerical point of view, with less than 100 cases in the last week, are Norway, Australia and China. And from a percentage point of view, Japan, Australia, Norway and China are working very well indeed. Well, how is social distancing and mask wearing going on at the moment? And it doesn't seem to be doing very well. Some leaders are not setting a very good example by not wearing masks in public, in fact making a point of not doing so. Some protesters are wearing masks, particularly the ones that are protesting civil injustice. However, the rallies to open up various parts of the world are generally not doing very well as far as wearing masks are concerned. The very nice weather over the last couple of weeks has brought out a lot of people onto the beaches, and this could be a problem. Over the next couple of weeks we'll look to see whether the returning to our old social habits is going to promote the spread of the disease again. Some states are opening up, but Minnesota put out this guideline to wash your hands, get tested when you feel sick, stay 6 feet away from others, wear a mask at all times when you're out, stay at home when you're able to, and work from home when you're able to. And Minnesota, if you look at the graph on the right, the case rate is still increasing linearly. It hasn't shown any time of turning over yet, so I'm hoping they're going to stay under lockdown for a bit longer. So until next time, do stay safe, and I will talk to you again in the future, I hope.